I'm going to get slapped for this one. Are you ready?
Yeah.
So people think I'm against the love and light community. I'm not. They're like, you don't like that or whatever. I like the true love and light heads, the true ones, not the ones that hide behind the love and light shield with that toxic positivity and are telling
Yes.
people, well, why don't you, you should help everybody else. Not before I help myself.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Of course.
I'm just going to jump into it.
Let's do it.
So you're Chris Medina.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm introducing you. But had a reading with you. So me and him already met. And your reading literally gave me the chills. I was telling my team, I'm like, right when you started reading, I was like, because you were so like on point with exactly like thoughts that I was having that I wasn't like 100% sure of or doubting myself or questioning, and you were just putting everything into stone, like you've been feeling this way and you've been saying this, and I'm like, oh whoa, it was like
I you know what, I try to go in there and not with kids gloves, but understand that everyone's not as direct or as bold as I can be. And you're a woman, and I'm not saying that that
Yes.
I should lean into the feminine side, but I wanted to make sure that I respected who you were as a person, but also delivered the message. Because my guides are like, yes, yeah, we understand how people work, but you also got to make sure that they're understanding what you're saying and you're delivering it in that way. So yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, good.
I think it's
good.
refreshing.
Good,
Because
yeah.
I know you were saying some people might have been like, oh, you're too direct. I'm like, why would you want anything else other than know exactly?
That's how I look at it. Yeah, I'd rather know right up front. Like I go to an astrologer. It's very, very few psychics that I go to that read me or whatever. And so I go to my astrologer and I'm like, give it to me straight up. All the negative stuff first, because I want to know not how to manipulate it, but if that does come into play, I'll be ready for it and know what to do at that time. So I feel like the way that
Exactly.
I like to do it is, I like to think that people like to do it that way as well too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I agree. Okay. So I want to ask you, what is the difference between a psychic and a medium?
The psychic side of stuff, this is my opinion, the way that I view it. The psychic is the predictive stuff, the past, present, and future, being able to, like I said, read you, know what your thought process is, where you're at mentally right now. And the medium side of stuff is the ghost stuff, like the spiritual energy, like the stuff that doesn't let me sleep at night.
Do you connect with that side too on that side? Well, obviously you do, because
Every night.
wow.
You can ask Jay every night. It feels like there's either a cat walking across my bed. I'll wake up to somebody whispering in my ear. You're going to trip out. I don't know if I told you this during our session.
No.
So me and my 6'2" butt like to take baths. And that's how I decompress and I relax in an Epsom salt bath and just chill out. This woman came in and she said, excuse me. She said, I didn't mean to bother you. She said, but I know that you like to sing.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah. And she goes, I used to be a vocal coach, a voice coach before I passed away.
Wow.
And people make the mistake of mimicking the voice that they're singing rather than using their real voice. And she said, I could teach you if you want me to. Yeah. To me, when I tell people these stories, to me, it's so everyday and so normal. But,
That's kind of cool though. But you're probably not scared, right? Because you're like used to it now, I would assume.
the ones that I can hear but don't talk are the ones that kind of get me a little bit worried.
Yes.
Because they're kind of lingering around, they're paying attention to what's going on, but they're not saying anything. Versus the
that's
ones that come in and they're like, like the woman did.
I've had some pretty interesting experiences. I for sure have came across a ghost before in my bed one time because I bought a dream catcher and I
yeah.
put it in the corner of my room, not this house.
Yeah.
And then I used to have nothing happen. And that night I had like a girl crawl up me and put her hands around my neck. And in the morning I went and I sat down all scared. I was just like, oh my gosh. And then my roommate came out and they're like, stressed out too. I'm like, what happened? They're like, I had a girl crawl up my bed. So we both had the same thing. So we're like, oh shit, this is a ghost. And then the next day I was like, okay, I need to sage my room and all this stuff. And then I went into my room and my sage was gone. And then I was standing in my house. I think I was on the phone and the mirror just tipped over and smashed on the floor, out of nowhere. This mirror that's been there for 3 years. So then I had this intuition that it was the dream catcher that I brought into the house. And I heard now future, you can catch spirits through dream catchers.
It also depends on where you got it from too.
Yes.
When people tell me this is no shot at metaphysical stores, but when they tell me, oh, I bought a candle that the intention is good vibes, positive energy. Mm-hmm. I trip out on that because I'm like, you don't know what the person was thinking or what they were going through when they were putting that intention into it. So even though their intention was like, I'm going to make this a positive candle, you don't know what their vibe was before they did it.
That's so true.
Yeah. And then the same thing with buying stuff. You don't know where it came from, who had it, what was going on with it there. So I'm real skeptical or kind of.
That's a good point that you just said too, is like, that's why we're all so powerful and we should put intentions onto things. Like, for an example, I now started praying on my food again. I've always heard about praying on your food and clearing the energy because you don't know what someone's going through when they're making your food. Like, say someone else made it. So now I started doing that. Like, I prayed that this is going to digest well. And I was constantly getting headaches from coffee, but I love coffee so much. This is a true addict. And I still wanted to drink it. So I prayed over it and then I stopped getting headaches now. And so it's interesting.
But you know what, though, when I gotta give it to you, because when we talk about influencers or people that, you know, do what you do, the social media type people, and they talk to me about manifestation, they always say, you know, well, I'm a grand manifestor. I'm trying to manifest stuff. And I'm like, make sure that that is really what your intention is. Because if you come into it with insecurity and fear and you're half-assing what you're putting out there, you're going to get back what you're putting out.
So true.
Yeah. And so with you, I got to do that. The praying over the food. I never thought to do that before.
Yeah. It actually does help.
Yeah.
So that's what you're just making me think. Okay. So mediums talk to spirits, and when you're talking to someone because you're a psychic, what do you feel like you're tapping into? Are you tapping into their higher self, or they're like spirit guides or angels or all?
I never used to use the word spirit guides.
Oh, okay.
I always used to say they are telling me, and people are like, who's they? Is that your spirit guide? So for lack of a better word, for me to say that I connected with your spirit guides is somewhat true, but then somewhat off, because the information that I get just comes in. It's not like somebody's coming and saying, oh, I'm speaking on behalf of you.
Yes.
You know, and in that way, it's just a thought process that comes in, images, or like how when I did your session, I just jumped right into it. The reason why is because, again, that so much information that comes in the way that it's delivered is, I talk to Jay about this all the time. It's not a voice that comes in so much as it is, again, I don't know how to explain, a thought process and the pictures that go along with it. Like, I can see what you do in your everyday life and, you know, your way of thinking and how sometimes your anxiety gets to you. You know what I'm saying? So that, I hope that helps.
It does.
Yeah.
It does get to me. So you basically, because I could tell when you're reading me, it seems like you have just so much downloads. And I've experienced having a download, which I would say, if no one knows what a download is, it's just like a thought that dropped in that you weren't even on that subject. It just comes in and you're like, oh, hey, how are you? Like a download. So you seem like when you're reading me, you're getting like a ton of downloads.
Yeah. And you're probably one of the very few people that I actually kept the camera on, because I get self-conscious. Because, again, if you notice through that, I'm not looking directly, I'm looking around, or I'm kind of looking down, whatever. And as I'm speaking, I always say this, it's like, yeah, I'm speaking, but I'm speaking as the third person. I can see myself, I can hear myself, and I can get all the messages, but I don't know how to say this. I'm there, but I'm not there. It's just like it takes over.
Yeah, you're like a vessel for this information.
Yeah.
That's really powerful to be able to do that. When did you realize you had this like gift?
Ever since I was a kid.
Really?
Yeah. I always tell people this story. I used to use it for bad.
Wow.
Because I was bullied a lot in school.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know where Simi Valley's at.
Yes.
I grew up there.
Okay.
And I'm old. I grew up in the early 80s where there was nothing there.
Yeah.
So I would use it to manipulate the other kids and use their insecurities or their fears against them. Or even like the teachers. Like the teachers were, they were
tripped
rude.
out by you.
They were
like,
rude they were rude as fuck to me all the time.
Wow. So since you were little, you could like see what kids were feeling, and like, because when we're young, like the biggest thing that I feel like we our mind plays tricks with us when we're young is like the kids that act like they don't give a shit, but really they're having the hardest time. So like, as a kid, did you see those kids and you knew what was happening behind?
Yeah, and then because I don't, as much as I come across as being direct and bold, it takes a lot out of me to keep it neutral, to keep those boundaries there. Because my first thing is to want to be very sensitive, or start being sympathetic or empathetic towards their needs before they're even empathetic towards anybody else's.
Yeah.
So I have to stop myself and not cry when I'm getting upset or whatever. But yeah, I would pick up on what was going on with them and try to make that effort of like, I understand or whatever, but they're kids.
Wow.
Get the fuck out of here, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Wow, you're so powerful though. That's so powerful.
Yeah, and it didn't help with my parents either. Like my mother, she would tell me certain things, and my guides would come in and say, keep your mouth shut. The reason why she's saying this is because X, Y, and Z. And then my big mouth would be like, I know why you're mad. It's because blah, blah, blah. And get the shit slapped out of me. Yeah, my guides were like, we didn't tell you this so you can run your mouth. We told you this so you could understand.
Wow.
Yeah.
I feel like I wish I like always pray, because I saw this little kid on social media. You've probably seen him, that little boy that like, I forget what he's like, supposedly like a starseed child, but like he talks about his past life to his mom.
Oh,
and I'm
yeah.
like, that really sensitive kid. I'm like, I would
Yeah.
hope that I have a little boy like that. I would love
I
to
can't
have
wait
a
till
boy
you
like
have
that.
kids. We talked about, yeah. And then with you, I mean, we talked a little bit before we got in here, but your perception and the way that you pick up on it, can you imagine what kind of mother you would be?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like extremely empathetic.
Yeah.
Like I feel like I'm like too much to a fault, and I could tell you are,
Mm-hmm.
because what you just said. And so sometimes, yeah, I take on other people's emotions, and I feel very sensitive inside, and I can get hurt easily. And especially when I was growing my business and it got so big, and like I had a lot of people trying to come after us and like take money from us because they're doing so well. So I constantly had like people trying to sue me even, and then like people trying to take our spot or make up things about us because we were in the entertainment industry. And it was really hard on like my soul because I'm so sensitive.
Yeah.
And I felt like I didn't know how to like protect myself. And that was a big...
See, I always say, yes, I'm very gay. You could tell by my voice and the way that I walk and all that stuff. But I also recognize that I am a man. And I have that masculine energy. So it's not that I guess you would call it a defense mechanism, but I purposely toughen myself up, like going to the market or driving on the street or whatever. I give off this energy of like, because it's protecting yourself. And then you got to do a good job of making sure that you release it and you don't carry that around. Can you imagine doing sessions all day and talking to ghosts and talking to people about what's hurting them and stuff, and then trying as professional as I want to be, sometimes you can't help but get, the tears in your eyes when someone's explaining what's going on to them, and then taking that around. You can ask Jay, like I'll walk around the house and I have to remind myself, you're not depressed.
Wow.
You're not, there's nothing wrong with you. You're picking up, let it go. So I understand what you're talking about when you say that.
That's huge. So
Yeah.
wow, that's really hard to not take on. So when you're reading other people, how did you build like a protectant to know the difference between someone else's emotions and yours? That probably took you a while to learn.
Yeah, my guides would come in and exactly like that. There's nothing wrong with you. What is so bad in your life? Like now I've started to realize, because if you get an excited feeling or you get that anxious feeling, your first go-to is like, oh my God, what's going to happen? What's wrong? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have to stop myself dead in my tracks and be like, you're not doing anything wrong. You didn't miss anything. Is this something that you should be excited for? That's what my guides say. Wow. Be excited. Good things are coming. Let go. Yeah.
You're so cool.
I don't feel like it sometimes. It's a lot of work.
No, I would imagine, but you're so like, that's so, I don't know, to me, I feel like it's the coolest gift ever that you have this. But yeah, I could imagine it's a big gift to take on. To feel a lot of people. Especially,
and I do a lot of medium readings too, and I always tell people I get a bad rap for it because they're like, we heard you don't like to do the medium side. It's not that I don't like to do it. I just feel like, I don't know if you guys have gone to mediums before or have had a medium reading. And they capitalize off of the death of the person, or they're very generic or whatever, very general when it comes to it. So when the ghosts come in, I listen to what they're saying. Like, I don't know how it works for other mediums, but I'd never read how to do it in a book. It's all been stuff that I've learned on my own. My guides would come in, or the ghosts would come in, and the ghosts have told me, why the F? And the way they were before they passed is how they are in the afterlife sometimes. And they'll tell me, why the F would I come and talk to you when I don't even know you?
Wow.
And I stopped and thought about it. I was like, you're right. Like, why would you come and talk to me?
You get a flash of everything that you've done, and you
get
see
your
all
wings,
your traumas and then everything makes sense. And then you're like, I was a horrible person. Or you could see from a third person view, like where you did wrong, and like you want to make up for your...
But sometimes what people don't realize sometimes is that, and this is what was taught to me, is there's three things that happen when you die. You either, whatever your belief system is, you believe in heaven or becoming a light up there. You go up there and you stay up there. I'm at peace. I have no desire to come back. I'm good to go. I want to evolve into the next thing. Or the second one is if there's a tragic accident, car accident, somebody kills you, you get killed on the street, and you weren't ready to go, and you're kind of walking around. Doesn't mean you're trapped here on earth, but the soul has a hard time letting go. And the third one, and I have firsthand experience with this one, is you pass away and you're immediately reincarnated into a different soul.
Wow.
Girl, one of the first gigs I did as a professional psychic, because I've always been a psychic, but to take it on the road and do it as a profession was at Comic-Con.
Wow.
And my guides had told me, you're going to have a crash course lesson on reincarnation. We're going to show you something, and you need to touch the kid when he sits down. And I was like, how am I going to touch him and not make it awkward? So as soon as he sat down in the chair next to me, I just bumped my leg into him on purpose.
Yeah.
Flood of stuff started coming in. I saw what he was like he died in the late 60s, early 70s. I saw drugs was an issue. I saw that he was musically inclined. I saw there was something wrong with his ear in that lifetime. And so I told him all this, and not realizing what I was doing. My guys were like, you shouldn't have said everything, but this is what you're getting. And he said, I told him all that stuff. He said, oh, did you see my ear? And I said, no, why? And he goes, I was born without an ear, so it's a prosthetic ear.
Wow.
Yeah, and I told him, so you have to be very careful in this lifetime not to get mixed up with drugs or shady-ass people. And one could turn around and say, well, that's everybody.
Yeah.
This person's no longer here.
Wow.
They passed away about a couple of years ago.
Really?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
I always have this like feeling that I've lived so many lifetimes. I like have this like knowing after I've learned about past lives. I'm like, I have lived a lot of lifetimes.
If I was going to put it on me, I'd say this is either my second to my last life, but I'm like a cat. I got a couple more lives and I'm good to go. Yeah.
Yeah. What do you feel like is when you talk to your own spirit, like what would you call it? Your higher self, or your guides?
My guides.
When you talk to it, what does it sound like to you? Like, how does someone connect with that? Can everyone connect with that?
Yeah, it takes practice, and sometimes you hear what you don't want to hear. But again, I always say this. It's unfair for me to answer that because I don't know anything else but that. Like when you talk about, you were raised by your mom and dad. I wasn't raised by my parents. My guides raised me.
Wow.
Yeah. So hearing all that and the lessons that come in, and I always tell people, I envy people that when they get signs, they're like, well, I'm going to put it off, and maybe I'll just get one more sign and then I'll jump into it. My guides are like, you better get up. Like when they told me I was going to do this in 2014,
Wow.
Jay was living there. We were in Oregon. We were running a family business. And can you imagine at like 3:30 in the morning going up to his room and being like, we have to quit our jobs.
Wow.
Or I have to quit my job. He's like, why? I said, my guides came in and said, now's the time you're going to start walking this path. I was making a bunch of money, and then I told my guides, well, wait a minute. I have a car note. I have a house note. I got the kids' school stuff. I said, what are you talking about? I was like, when was the last time you were alive? I said, I have responsibilities. They said, no, if you don't do this, you know what's going to happen. And they showed me what happened the last time that I didn't listen.
Wow. Oh, so you had a past life where you didn't listen?
No, I had a similar experience in this lifetime where I was like, I'm not going to do it.
Yes.
Like I'm not ready. Like you were forcing me to, and they were like, nope. So yeah. So when people tell me, I have to think about this, I'm like,
wow.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. What was I going to say? Oh yeah. What do you think about dreams? Because I've had a lot of dreams where I've like, I always have something to do with my dreams. I remember them all. I get a lot of messages in them. But sometimes like I'll go through my day and something will trigger, like something will happen that I realized I dreamt last night. So for an example, this girl texted me that used to be one of my clients. She texted me in the morning saying like, well, I had a dream about her and she was like trying to get me to drink with her and party with her. And I was like, no, I'm not going to like hang out with you tonight. Like she's not even my client anymore. She's not my friend. Like I'm not going to hang out with her. So then I left, and then when I woke up, she texted me saying, I'd love to be your client again. So like I have dreams where it's like specific things I dreamt about like happen the next day. Mm-hmm. Have you ever had that?
When somebody, like, you have to understand something. When somebody like you dreams things like that, because I want you to pay attention to this, because this applies specifically for somebody like you. You are so on throughout the day. Your mind doesn't shut off. You're thinking about stuff. You're trying to be intuitive. You got businesses to do. You got podcasts. You got all this stuff that makes you on a daily basis. So what better way to get a hold of you than through the subconscious? When you're at, like the way the ghosts come to talk to me in my dreams, what better way to deliver information to you while you're asleep? You're vulnerable. Your mind isn't on the way that it should be here. You're actually asleep. So you get those hits that way. Pay attention, especially if you disconnected from this person and they were trying to get you to party. Maybe this client coming in could be somebody that's going to be bad for you, or that we told you stay away from this person.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And then another thing, because I told you, and I haven't told my people that listen to the podcast yet, but I've gotten in a breakup recently and I told you that. And what was crazy too is the other night, maybe like 3 weeks or 2 weeks ago, go to sleep. And I have a dream that I'm like lucid dreaming. And then in the dream, I'm like falling through different like worlds. And one of the worlds I went to, it showed like a big sign that said stay single. And then I went and I thought I woke up from that moment and I was in my bed, but I was still sleeping. I didn't know I was still sleeping. And I realized like my jaw was like clenching so tightly. And I'm like, oh, my jaw is like hurting. Like I couldn't unlock it. And then I realized my eyes were swollen and I'm like, oh shit. And then in real life that night, I put these eye drops in. So I'm like, oh my God, I'm allergic to the eye drops. So I'm like stressing out and I can't like move my jaw and my eyes are swollen. And then I'm like slowly like passing away. And I'm like crawling out of my bed to like go to my sister to like get her to help me. And then I woke up. So I felt like I was like dying in my dream. So then had this weird intuition. I like laughed to myself when I went to the bathroom. I'm like, oh, I literally just like rebirthed right then. I just like a part of me died.
And because of your fear of not having control. Look at the jaw. You weren't able to speak or scream or do whatever, and then your eyes you couldn't see or whatever. You have to make sure that when we talked about this during your session here. You overthink a lot, but at the same time too, I understand why you overthink it. But what you do is what you're doing is downplaying your power by doing that. Does that make sense? Like it takes a lot out of you to have to be it's not consistent, but have to set boundaries. There we go. To set those boundaries and stick by them. So with you either feel like again this is not an abuse of your power, but like I'm so afraid or God, I hate having to do this here. I feel like whatever the case may be, that plays out in your subconscious.
That's such a powerful thing to say. I feel like so many people can relate with that because sometimes we'll have an intuition or a gut feeling, but a lot of us are playing down our power by not following that gut instinct.
And then what ends up happening? You end up regretting it or resenting yourself because I bet you anything, especially you, fuck, I knew I should have did that.
Yes.
I knew I shouldn't have said that, or I blah 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 this or whatever. Don't do that. Because how else are you gonna lean into we'll call it your ability, your own intuition, how your guidance system works. How else are you gonna lean into it if you don't trust it? And you of all people know what happens when you go against it.
And you strengthen
That channel.
when you keep going with it, right?
Yeah. That's why I'm saying I don't know anything else but this. And people tell me, you're too psychic. You don't live in the real world. Yes, I do. I just don't. When people, they're like, you don't give people chances. You cut people off. I'm very good at giving people chances. How many chances do you give somebody before you're like, you're out?
So
Because I was just telling Jay this in the car on the way over here. People don't realize I give people chances here, but me giving them chances, I already knew by giving them chances it was the wrong person to give this to.
Yes.
But I want to play fair, and I don't want people to say, well, you don't cooperate or you don't participate or whatever, and then I end up going against it. Bullshit. Same thing with you. Honor that. Why else would you have that feeling if you weren't meant to use it? Especially you. Not everybody listens to it, but you're sensitive to it. Yeah.
I know it's hard to get yourself to trust that and this is like another core wound I'm trying to learn is the trusting myself. I like trust a lot. I'm very trustworthy to people, but I don't always trust myself, which is a big one.
I'm going to get slapped for this one. Are you ready?
Yeah.
So people think I'm against the love and light community. I'm not. They're like, you don't like that or whatever. I like the true love and light heads, the true ones, not the ones that hide behind the love and light shield with that toxic positivity and are telling
Yes.
people, well, why don't you should help everybody else. Not before I help myself. And that doesn't make me selfish and that doesn't make me against people. But how can I lift you up if I can barely lift myself up?
Exactly. So true.
So when it comes to you, again, I think that when it comes to not your intuition, but your feeling and your emotions towards the situation, that's what holds you back. You know what needs to be done. It's you like, oh my God, it makes me nervous to have to do this, or I don't want to do it. It's so scary.
Yes.
Having this is better than having nothing at all, like the breakup.
Yes.
But you're meant for more.
How much of the things that you see, like when you're reading someone, how much of it is like set in stone? Like, so say you see like, okay, you're going to go towards this path. Like how much of that is like set in stone and how much of it is free will that you see?
50-50. I'll give you a really good example. Do you watch Vanderpump?
Yes.
You know Stassi?
Yes.
And I'm not saying this because she's my girl, but every reading that I gave her was written in stone.
Wow.
There was nothing that was going to change it. If you know anything about her determination, her ambition to succeed, it's not shitty. It's just, I refuse to accept anything less, and she goes after it. You saw what happened to her. She had her demise on the show, all that stuff, all that bad shit that happened to her. She hasn't been on TV for what, over 5 years?
Wow.
And look what she's done on her own. That was all written in stone. There was no, well, if Stassi, if you decide to do this is what's going to happen. It was going to happen no matter what. Versus what you just said, the free will. What's going to stop us? I can only people get so far, and they start to realize, God, it's so tough and it's so hard to have to stay here, and they give up and they go back to what they know. And I will tell people that if you stay on this path and you continue to move forward, this is what's going to happen.
Wow.
Yeah. So a lot of it is free will, and that's where psychics go wrong, is because I think they want the validation of being right during a session and not telling people because if is like, well, why am I coming to you if? Well, I have to take you into consideration and realize that, and I'm just going to be funny here, you're going to pussy out as soon as you get up front there. How can I tell you that you're going to be strong and you're going to accomplish this when you're going to get scared and back away?
Yeah.
And people don't want to hear that. I want to know the truth versus somebody. You got businesses going on. You're a hustler. We talked about that. There's not going to be anything else but to do that for you. Does that make sense? That is what you're going to do. You don't know a 9 to 5. I'm not going to go. There's nothing wrong with 9 to 5ers, but you have to be in control of your money and your destiny and your situation. There is no settling when it comes to you. That's a given, right? That's what I would have told you in the reading.
Yeah, that makes sense. So and what about if someone talks about someone that they were dating and you're like, no, I don't see it for you. Can it always be different? Or is there some people you read and you're like, no, it's never going to work. You could just know that it's never going to work.
Yeah. I had a reading today before I got here where I told her, I was like, look, I want to be hopeful for the situation and give him, I hate this word, the grace to be him. But I think that let me preface this real fast. I do a lot of couples counseling, a lot of therapy and stuff, and I always get into it with the guys, and I'll tell you why. How many guys oh God, he's sitting right here too. He's gonna be like, fuck
My
you.
camera guy.
Their mothers, I always tell them, your mother sets you up for failure when it comes to dating.
Wow.
Why? What are you saying about my mother? She didn't teach you emotional fucking boundaries. No woman other than your fucking mother is going to put up with your shit. Yes. And then you're going to have the goddamn nerve to tell that girlfriend, oh, you're just being shitty. Why? Because I'm not telling you what you want to hear?
Exactly.
Yeah. And I tell mothers now, don't be afraid. I'm not telling you how to raise your kid, but when you're raising a boy, you're raising a man, teach him those boundaries. I understand you want to teach them positivity, but don't let them think they're invincible when you know they're not.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Also, a lot of men don't know how to go inside themselves and be vulnerable or look at their pains. They kind of ignore. They're not as sensitive, or they try not to be
Or
strong.
you get the ones that are sensitive, and when I talk about feminine, it has nothing to do with being gay, but they have either that feminine emotional or that sensitivity side that collides with their masculine energy and causes them to misrepresent who they really are instead of leaning into it and being like, I want to be sensitive, I want to be taken care of. I think that you would love to be in a relationship with a guy that was vulnerable in that way, where he comes home and it's like, just rub my head real quick for me, and then he rubs your back, whatever the case may be. You want him to be not a pile of mush, but to be able to
be emotional
and own that. Yeah,
that's so true. Okay, so you obviously were born with these gifts. Is there anyone that you've seen and be able to develop these gifts, to work on trying to get messages, and if so, how?
I like to work with kids.
Oh, that's cool.
I think that it's a little bit more difficult to work with adults because they're so jaded. And with kids, as long as, we were talking about that kid that's a starseed. And, they usually lose that around between 7 to 10 years old because society comes in and jades and they go to school, have to deal with all that stuff. I would have probably lost it too, or not have leaned into it as much if my guides weren't insistent on sticking with this. Does that make sense? So being able to develop it and trusting your intuition and also taking time. People go about it. I'm sweating like a pig here, but
you're fine.
They go about it. They do things that they read in books. Like when you always hear people say, I'm going to meditate. How many people really meditate and can sit there for a whole hour? I can't.
Yeah.
So I always tell people, do what works for you. My form of meditation is when I'm cooking, when I'm cleaning, when I'm driving in the car. I'm able to relax and let go and listen to that and be able to, I don't like to say test your guides, but if I need to see this, show me this and pay attention for it. Or put that out there. When I go to sleep, like I used to be heavy into dreams when I was a kid. I had a stepfather that would tell me to sit in the room for an extended period of time. And then when my mom would get home, he'd be like, okay, go in the spare bedroom and watch TV, like 10 minutes before she got home. So I
Wow.
spent a lot of time in the room alone, and I would work on dreams because I
Wow.
was huge into Freddy Krueger. So I was like,
Wow.
I wonder if I can pull people in my dreams or change the narrative of the dream.
Wow,
And I
that's
was able
cool.
to do that. I was able to, so being able to develop it and work with it and stick through it and pay attention to how yours works. Mine isn't going to work the same way yours works. Develop it on your own. I think people are always trying to follow in the footsteps of other people instead of creating their own.
Also, our ego comes in, right? As an adult. So, say you ask for a sign and then comes in, you're like, oh, no, that was a coincidence. Or
I'm going to throw that penny back in the thing. I don't want to deal with it. Yeah.
that
Because you don't,
happens a lot.
yeah. And I tell people, I tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear.
What's so cool is like the more spiritual I got and I started like seeing synchronicities and seeing signs where I'm like, okay, I keep like, I get signs from the universe now that I'm like, oh, I can't unsee this, what the universe is trying to tell me. I feel bad for people that aren't living like that. I'm like, the world is so alive when you actually like
Yeah.
allow it to be. There's so much signs everywhere.
But see, you, again, when it comes to who you are as a person, slap me in the mouth for this one here. When it comes to dating, that's where you can kind of get a little bit sidetracked. Does that
For
make
sure.
sense? And you, as much as you want to be positive and you want to put your all into it there, what ends up happening is that it's not that you lose it or whatever, but you go against that. Because again, it's like, well, it's better to have this than not have anything at all. Or, maybe I need to stick this out because I can be a lot to handle here. And you start making excuses for shit.
For sure,
And you
I
start
do.
settling. And I always tell people, what happens when you settle? It leads to resentment. What happens with that resentment? You start taking it out on your partner.
It's like and I was thinking about this the other day. I have so much humility. Like I'll look at where I'm wrong often, and I was thinking about it the other day because I have a friend of mine that I'm close with. She has a lot of humility, and she always like humbles herself. And like those people sometimes are the most beautiful people because they can constantly like because they're able to like see themselves deeply in their pains, they can also like really be there for other people more. Whereas there's certain people you could tell they just think they're the best thing ever. They don't really see where they're wrong and so forth. And they're like walking through the world, never really able to deeply connect with others.
Yeah.
So I'm like, part of that is like a beautiful thing. But then at the same time, we can make excuses for others' actions and try to be like, well, I was wrong here and here and here and here. And then sometimes not have a clear boundary.
I was so glad the way that we went about doing your session and then doing the show. I didn't want to come on here and do the reading right up front because I didn't, it's a lot of personal stuff. You saw how it was in your
Yes,
reading. So I'm
yes.
glad that, and I told you, I'm glad that we got a chance to do this just one-on-one with you and I, because I'm not saying that I had this misperception of who you were, but people will look at somebody like you who's beautiful, very successful here, and don't think that you have that side to you. And they're wrong.
Exactly.
You are somebody that really practices what you preach, and is really going to start leaning into that other side of yourself. You've always had it there, but trusting yourself and not being afraid to be like, you know what, maybe it is good for me to be alone for right now. You know what I'm saying? Like you're open to that stuff, and I think that that's going to help you a lot, not only with your personal life, but with business and how you are in relationships. It's a good time for you, girl. I'm telling you, really good time for you.
Yeah, I was gonna say my biggest feeling I've had since a kid is fear of regret. And that's why I feel like I've had a past life. I'm like, in some lifetime, I got to the end of life because I felt this since a kid, and I've looked back at my life and had massive regret, like that I didn't do the career I wanted or the marriage I wanted or something. So I always have this feeling of like, since I was young, like I could feel what that would feel like, and I don't want to be there. So like,
That regret, when we talk about people that have passed over, and whether I know it's going to be morbid, like suicide, or I remember one of the girls that I was friends with back in the day had told me, I want to test your ability. I want to test it with the whole medium side of things. And so she took me to one of her nephew that passed away. He died of a drug overdose. And I read him or whatever. And then she's like, I want to take you somewhere else. And this guy was, it wasn't there. It was a spirit. He said, oh, it's you again. And I said, what the fuck? And he goes, no, I'm talking about your friend. She comes and visits me every now and then. And I said in my head, oh, she doesn't know you? And he says, no, but she knows of my situation, something like she knows of my situation. And he told me, he said, I have regrets. I have regrets of what I did. Now looking back on it, and realizing that, I acted out. He hung himself. acted out of emotion or whatever. And then I got irritated because I was like, I'm sorry, or whatever. He's like, no, I appreciate her coming, but let her know she doesn't have to do that. And then I turned to my friend. I was like, because I'm not saying anything to her. She's walking with me. I said, do you know this person? And she's like, no, why? And I said, because he's telling me. I said, this guy hung himself.
Wow.
I said, he committed suicide. I said, what are you doing here? And she said, oh, he used to live down the street from me.
Wow.
And I said, I read about it or whatever. I was like, God damn, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So when we talk about regret and stuff like that, that one thing they always come back and say is, I really wish that I lived my life to the fullest. Mm-hmm. And that's how that, that reincarnation comes in, or, having to come back and repeat. I always tell people,
So
I'm not
true.
making
I know
fun
what
of.
you're about to say. Go ahead and say it.
Yeah. Like, take advantage of it. Live your life to the fullest. No regrets there. Take yourself out of your comfort zone, because if you have to come back and repeat it all over
You're
again,
going to repeat it if you don't.
you
do it in
cannot
this
cheat karma.
lifetime.
You can't cheat karma. You can't, and that's why I tell people, God, I wish sometimes I had the leniency or the as that knock comes into the grace that your guides or the universe gives you to be able to tiptoe around it or be like, oh, I'm not going to do it this time or whatever. My guides are like, get your fucking ass in there
I
and do
love
it.
that though.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah.
I feel like it's so cool that you were like, you have that, like, and you have that trust and the knowing. I feel like you've probably never really been in relationships for so much longer than you should be, right? Because you're constantly being told like, this is not the right one.
But that's the human side of me though. Like the human side of me, like when it comes to relationships, I stay in way longer than I need to.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I can fix you.
That's how I am. I want to fix them.
And but you can't.
Like, let me heal this in you.
And then what ends up happening is what happens. They become conditioned to fall in love, to fall in alignment with that love language of, well, she's got me. I can, blah, 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 this, whatever. He doesn't need this or whatever the case may be. And it's wrong.
Yes.
Yeah.
What's the biggest misconception that people think about what you do?
That it's the devil's work.
Yeah.
You're going to hell or whatever. When I have two kids. When my daughter was first born, I was going through a really bad depression. I went through a horrible breakup during that time. I was thinking about committing suicide. I was like, I just can't do this anymore. And I told my guides were like, you need to toughen up. And I said, I'm telling you right now, if I wake up tomorrow morning and I still have this lingering feeling, I'm going to be honest, I don't know what I'm going to do. Do you know that I had a dream that same night that there was this voice coming from, I was like in a parking lot at a bowling alley or something, and we were all getting ready to go bowl, and I heard this little kid saying, help me, and it was coming from the drain, like on the storm drain or whatever. And I said, what are you doing down there? And they were like, I'm stuck, and started to cry or whatever. And then my guide said, don't talk to it. And I said, what? And they said, don't talk to it. And they said, can you come and help me? Just come down here. Help me. And then I said, what? I said, if I'm not supposed to go in there, what do I do? And my guide said, pray. I said, I don't know what to pray. And I started saying, Our Father. That's the only prayer that I know is Our Father. And I started saying that. And I know it sounds so weird and so metaphysical, but the sun came up from behind me and started illuminating my back and the back of my head. And I felt like this warmth and this protection. And then I heard that kid saying, no, and started cussing.
Wow.
Fuck you.
So this was in your dream?
Yeah.
So it was like a demon or something?
Yeah, you want to die. You don't want to live anymore. It's look how painful it is for you. Blah blah blah. This, yeah. And then I had a dream with this saint. I'm not a religious person. I'm spiritual, but I don't go to church or anything like that. And then I don't know if you ever heard of the Saint Padre Pio. Mm-mm. He's supposed to be like a psychic saint, a healer. He came to me in my dream and he was like, he said, you and I are very similar. I understand what you do or whatever, and don't be afraid of it. And I said, who are you? And he said, my name is Pio. I'm Padre Pio. And I was like, what? And so I woke up, and my friend, the one that I was telling you about that does the tarot cards, I called her and I said, hey, because she's really religious and she's a Catholic. And I said, hey, have you ever heard of a saint called Padre Pio? And she goes, yeah. She said, remember that bag of medallions that I gave you? He's one of them that's in there. And I said, well, what is it? I was testing her. I said, well, what does he do? She said, I gave it to you because he's considered a psychic saint.
Wow. That's cool.
So anybody that tells me you're doing the devil's work, no.
Wow.
And what am I doing that's so, other than helping people heal and bridging that gap. If you want to do the medium side, bridging that gap and helping them heal from people that have passed on there or getting resolution in that way. And then you've had your own dip into it. I didn't tell you anything you didn't already know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I was going to say too, I always think that if you have this, if you're born on this earth and you have this, like, why would you have it if it wasn't also something that's God wanted you to have, if they, believe in that?
Because how many people you see that claim to have this ability are using it to bridge the gap when it comes to relationships and meddling in other people's lives? Or one of the girls, one of my clients had called and told me, my brother wants a reading from you. I said, okay, I'll read him or whatever. And he wasn't trying to hear any of it.
Yeah.
And I told him, I said, you're going to go down a path. I said that you're going to end up regretting or whatever. So he told his sister, he's full of shit. He's not real. He doesn't know how to talk to guys and all this other stuff or whatever. He's not hearing what he wants to hear. And then he's telling you that you're just believing everything that he says. I said, but then I said, is he seeing somebody else? And she goes, yeah, he has a psychic that he sees in Vegas. Let me tell you how this works. This psychic calls him up and says, it's time for your session again. And also too, you need to start burning this candle.
Wow.
They don't send the candle. They burn the candle over there.
Yeah.
And I go, how is he going to believe somebody? I said, because he wants to hear all that stuff there.
Yes.
So a lot of times you hear psychics, that, meddling in people's lives or doing things that are, one other girl called and told me, should I purchase, I told you my father passed away. I went to go see another psychic and she told me that I need to purchase a gold urn to put his ashes in. And I said, where's this gold urn coming from? She said, oh, they're going to order it and they're going to keep it over there. I said, how much does it cost? She's like, it's like $9,000. I said, let me get this straight. I said, I had to say this. I said, listen how stupid you sound. I said, you're going to buy a $9,000 gold urn that you're never going to see. You're going to send your father's ashes over there. Like,
And
tell me,
that they're going in an
just
urn.
walk me through this. How does this make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of psychics that are doing it incorrectly, and then it gets a bad rap for the people that are doing
Yeah.
it to heal and help others.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true. Because you can misuse your gifts.
And what happened to me when I misused it?
Yeah.
All that negative stuff.
Yeah. Wow, that's so interesting. Sometimes me and my sister have talked about that too. If you think something's going to happen and you're like, oh, this is going to happen, then you almost like live your life thinking that's going to happen.
In fear. Yeah. And I'm not about that.
But we all have free will, right? So even if you told the future, they can change it at any time, right?
Yeah, but depending on how that message is delivered, and this could be, and I've seen psychics do this. If you go against it or you don't do what I'm telling you to do, why do they do that? Because it makes that person reliant on them and said, oh, you predicted this, whatever. No, they didn't predict that. You did that based on what they told you, and that keeps them coming back. I always tell people, I don't want to read you for the same thing more than 3 times, because if I do, then you're becoming dependent on me, and you're not living your life. Go do what you need to do.
Wow, that's so powerful.
You have to. You have to.
Yeah. Wow, that's good for people to hear, because
Yeah.
I know there's a lot of people that rely a lot on every single thing needing to get a psychic reading.
And my waiting list is long, and I've had people, I spoke to somebody yesterday that was like, I've been waiting 3 years to talk to you. Wow. And I said, I'm so sorry. And they said, no, I don't. And I'm getting goosebumps. This is their own word. I don't think I would have been ready to hear what you had to say back then. Wow. So this is perfect timing. And I tell my guides, because I always say, God, that my waiting list is so bad. Like people want readings or whatever. And they said, it's all in timing. Yeah.
That's so true.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, because I was going to say, and how many readings can you do a day before you're like, I'm drained?
No more than 6.
Yeah.
No more than 6.
Wow.
It is, I will be a zombie. I mean, you can ask Jay. I'll walk out there and he'll be like, "That's it," or he'll knock on the door in between, because I always book on the hour, just in case somebody says, I want, and they book a half an hour. I don't book like at 3:30 or 3:15. It's either 4, 3, 4, whatever. So that if they want more than a half hour reading, I can go into it. But if there's a break, he'll come and say, "You need to eat something."
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you're like the vessel, and then it's hard for you to. Is it drain you a lot?
It drains, and you don't want to do anything.
Yeah.
You're tired on the couch. It's hard, even like to sleep. I mean, it doesn't shut off. I've already told you, I wake up to people talking to me,
Wow.
telling me what's going on or whatever. And then, sitting on the bed. The other day, something went really pushed my cheek in. And I was like, leave me alone.
Wow.
Yeah. I know it sounds out there, but I mean, I'm so used to it that it sounds like normal. Like when I'm talking about it, it's like, oh, no big deal, whatever.
Yeah.
Because it isn't to me. It happens every single day.
Wow. So like even when you heard the knock right there, you just like know when it's something.
Yeah.
That's so crazy.
Do you know we were watching a scary movie at the house, and they were playing a Ouija board, and the thing said they asked it, give us a sign if you're here. Do you know the cupboard doors cracked in my house? And I said, that's not for, yeah, I'm getting goosebumps. I'm like, that's not for you. And so I have to be really careful, even like what I watch.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What we watch is a big thing.
Yeah.
Especially for empaths, right? Because that's why I can't watch a scary movie. I'm the biggest baby in the world. But like there was one time I was home alone here and I heard like hard and I was home alone. And I
Yeah.
literally like my stomach dropped, my heart's dropped in my stomach. I paralyzed and I couldn't move.
How about hearing, and you hear those knocks? I'm telling you, pay attention to that, because those knocks. I lived in Oregon, and I heard that it was loud, right?
Yeah, it was loud.
Intrusive.
Yes.
I heard boom, 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 and then I heard somebody downstairs. I thought maybe, God, did I not lock the door and it flew open? Because I heard somebody say, "Hello."
Yeah, I've heard voices many times, like at least 4 times now.
I said, "What the fuck?" Yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
And a lot of times I hear them when I'm like sleeping. They'll wake me up out of my dream. Is that normal?
yeah. Or, have you ever, you know, when they say that you have that falling feeling or whatever?
Yeah.
But do you ever hear loud booms?
No, I just heard the knock. And then one time I was also home alone and I heard a bunch of guys upstairs like yelling. Like, so I thought someone broke in and I was paralyzed again. I like called my friend. They're like, call the police. But I'm like, but what if they're not? Because I don't hear them anymore. And I'm like freaking out. So then I called my neighbor. They came to the house to make sure no one was here. Like it was that realistic. I thought for sure people are in my house or around the house.
Well, look at the area that you live in. It's
Yeah.
old area. I mean, these
Yeah.
are new houses and stuff, but the area, the land is old. A lot of people pass through here. And also, too, remember something. When people say, well, how come it's attracted to you? I always think of myself, and this is not a light, like a bright light, like, like I think I'm a white light, but I think that I feel like when I activate that side of it, it's like a moth going to a light. They're attracted to that energy. And look at how sensitive you are.
Oh,
So,
I
of course,
like-
it's going to be attracted
And I'm
to you.
scared of the dark. My bed's on the floor because I'm like so sensitive to like, I don't want anything under my bed. I have to leave my blinds open so I have some natural light coming in at night.
Girl, I sleep with the fan
sensitive.
on just to hear that
I
sound.
have the fan on.
I sleep with I watch I Love Lucy every night with the timer on 120 so it goes off. And even if I have to be asleep, because if that goes off, then I automatically turn it back on.
Me too.
Yeah.
That's how I am. If my fan randomly turns off, I have to have noise.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's funny. It's super sensitive.
We should hang out sometime. I think
I
we'd have a
know.
lot of fun together. Yeah. Let's conjure some stuff up.
I know, it's so crazy. Oh yeah, this is one I did want to ask. Do you think everyone has some level of psychic abilities? Like I have read how people have, there's different clairvoyance,
Clairvoyant, clairaudient.
yeah,
Yeah,
Do you feel like everyone has some gift and it's just about if they want to hone into it or not?
Yeah. And whether or not. Yeah, I think that everybody has that ability. I mean, we're all born. This is why I always talk about society and how we're raised and our environment that we're raised in that makes us not listen to that or lean into that. Or, if I would have listened to my mother as a kid telling me, I'm going to take those scary movies away from you, or you're just making this up. You're imagining it. Can you imagine being like 7 years old and hearing the carpet scrape because you hear something walking there, standing in your doorway, and you're paralyzed in fear and you have to go sleep in your sister's room? Because, yeah, if I listened to my guides would tell me, don't tell her anything anymore.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think that, again, we all have some sort of ability, whether we choose to utilize it or lean into it is totally up to us. And also, again, our environment. Like I always tell, I love babies. Like babies and animals are attracted to me like crazy. And I love working with kids, even like autistic kids too. Even though they're autistic, that doesn't mean that that they got a messed up life. They're just at a higher frequency. And I've witnessed this before. I'm going to put this out there, because I work with them too. I was working out at the gym one time, and I kept hearing this little kid say, "Hi, hi," and I said, "What the fuck is saying hi?" And it was just me and Jay. And I looked over, and then I saw this kid standing next to his dad, and in his mind, not his mouth,
Wow.
he didn't go. He just, in his mind, he said hi. I said,
Whoa.
"It's you." I said, "It's you," in his head. And he smiled when I said, "It's you."
Wow.
And the father the father says, "What are you doing?" And the kid looked at the dad and looked at me, and he goes, like that.
Wow.
And I said, "Oh, he was just saying hi." And then there was an autistic kid, nonverbal, that would scream at the end of our block that we used to live on. And I told my friend, I said, "Let me just see." I said, "I know it sounds psycho," I said, "but let me just see if I can tap into him mentally." And I said, relax, calm down. Do you know that he stopped?
Holy shit.
Yeah. They're on
That's
this is
crazy.
autistic. This is not just everybody. I mean, I wish I can do that with everybody else, but they're on a different frequency.
I have heard that too, like ADHD, ADD, all these things have like could potentially be like gifts that an R3D or what our school system and everything has taught us is wrong, but we just don't understand it.
And I'm going to get a lot of shit for this, and it's the parents too that don't have the patience to sit there with their kid, and instead of thinking, they're not learning, like my I've seen family members that where they go to parent teacher night and the teacher's saying the kid they're not learning that way or whatever, blah blah blah. And I had to sit there and listen to what these people were saying. And I said, did you ever question? I said, I'm looking at you as a parent and I'm seeing how your style is. I said, did you ever stop to think that maybe that teacher is not a good vibe for your kid? Mm-hmm. And I said, how does that teacher speak? Oh, she's very soft spoken. I said, your son is going to run all over that shit. He needs somebody that's a little bit more aggressive. So parents that don't pay attention to that stuff lean into what other people say, and they're misdiagnosing these kids instead of teaching them. Not everybody learns the same way. That's why I'm big on telling people, stop following other people or what works for them. Find out for yourself.
Wow. Yeah. So when you're autistic, how you said they're tapped into a higher frequency, does it just mean that their brain is able to capture more information quicker?
It's fast. It's fast. And then also too, because they're kids and the anxiety that it causes think about you being an adult and something, maybe you have a big project that you're working on. It's multi-million-dollar and you're like, you want the money, but it's also something that you're going to be excited for. And the night before you can't sleep, you got the shits, whatever the case may be. Can you imagine being a kid that way?
Wow.
And they don't know when the parents are like, chill out or whatever, giving them Benadryl or, taking them to put them on medication. I had a family member whose son was very, very psychic, very intuitive, and I told this family member, I said, they got a gift, they're different or whatever. Their mother didn't lean into that, put him on lithium. The next time I saw him, it was like looking at a dark house.
That's sad.
Yeah.
Also, so many kids have ADD and ADHD, and they were put on like Adderall and Ritalin, what I think it's called. So many of them.
And check out and look who their parents are. Are the parents more laid back, or where they got too much time? They don't have enough time on their hands to put up with the kid's energy or whatever, but want to have a kid and don't know how to deal with them? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hate to be so shitty like that, but I blame the parents for that.
Yeah.
Take time to invest in your child.
Yeah,
learn them.
Understand
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so powerful.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, I went somewhere else.
No, it's a good answer. No, okay. So you're so amazing. I loved having you on.
Baby.
You're the
Thank
best.
you so much.
Where would you like people to find you? I know you said you have a long waiting list, and I feel like everyone listening is going to be like, wow, I really want a reading with him.
Yeah, they can go to my website, chrismedina.guide. And let me just say this out loud. It's nothing flashy. I always tell people I am not an influencer. I'm a psychic. To find me on social media, it's at Psychic Chris M. My only account. I get a lot of people imitating me, but you can find me on social media or sign up for a reading.
Yes.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
You're
much,
the
love.
best.
Thank you.
Please comment. Let me know what parts you loved the most and tell me what you want me to speak about next. I read them all. I respond to you all. And please subscribe. This means the most to me to come on here each week and connect with you all. I love you so much. And as you know, I come back every week, so I'll see you soon.